The war for the South China Sea won't begin with a missile launch or a declaration from a capital. It's already begun in the flash of an axe blade, the splintering of a rubber boat, and the scream of a wounded sailor. The conflict that could drag the United States and China into a superpower showdown isn't a distant threat. It's a brawl happening right now in the turquoise waters around a forgotten, rusting ghost ship. The recent clashes are not the start of a war, but the violent, bloody crescendo of a decades-long power play, a high-stakes game of chicken where the price of flinching is global dominance. This is the story of how a dotted line on a map became the world's most dangerous tripwire. A rusting ghost and a line drawn in anger. It's hard to imagine a more unlikely flashpoint for World War III than 2nd Thomas Shoal. There's nothing there but a submerged reef and the BRP Sierra Madre, a World War II-era ship the Philippines intentionally ran aground in 1999. It's a rust-eaten skeletal monument to defiance, manned by a tiny contingent of Filipino Marines. To Manila, it's a sovereign outpost. To Beijing, it's an illegal eyesore, a splinter under its fingernail that must be removed. And so, the routine missions to resupply this handful of Marines with food and water have become the stage for a terrifying drama. The script has become brutally predictable. Philippine supply boats, small and vulnerable, make a run for the shoal, and then out of nowhere they are swarmed, not by gray-hulled warships, but by the white-hulled bullies of the China Coast Guard and a shadowy fleet of blue-hulled fishing boats, China's maritime militia. What used to be dangerous blocking maneuvers has escalated into outright savagery. We're talking about high-pressure water cannons ripping apart equipment, military-grade lasers blinding crews, and in a shocking escalation in June 2024, Chinese personnel swarming a Filipino naval vessel like pirates, brandishing knives, spears, and axes. They didn't just block the mission, they physically assaulted and injured the sailors, puncturing their inflatable boats and reportedly severing one sailor's thumb. This isn't random aggression. It's a calculated strategy, a form of state-sanctioned thuggery designed to terrorize the Philippines into submission. And here's the crazy part. Under President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., the Philippines isn't backing down. Reversing his predecessor's quiet approach, Marcos has gone on the offensive, not with weapons, but with cameras. His government is waging a campaign of radical transparency, plastering videos of China's brutal tactics across the internet for the world to see. It's a bold gamble to shame a superpower and rally international support. This entire violent dance is about one thing: a line on a map. The infamous 9-dash line is a vague U-shaped demarcation that claims nearly 90% of the South China Sea as China's exclusive territory. It's a cartographic fiction first sketched out by a committee in the 1940s and later adopted by the communist regime. It has no basis in international law. In fact, in 2016, an international tribunal at The Hague delivered a legal bombshell, ruling overwhelmingly in favor of the Philippines and declaring the 9-dash line null and void. China's reaction? It treated the ruling like junk mail, calling it nothing more than a piece of waste paper. Because for Beijing, this isn't about legal technicalities, it's about destiny. To understand China's obsession with these waters, you have to understand a ghost story that haunts the leadership in Beijing: the century of humiliation. This is the potent state-sponsored narrative that from the 1840s to 1949, China was carved up, exploited, and subjugated by foreign powers: the British, the Japanese, the Americans. The story goes that China's weakness was its failure to control the seas, allowing foreign gunboats to sail up its rivers and dictate its fate. The great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, the core promise of the Chinese Communist Party, is therefore a mission to reverse this history. Taking back the South China Sea is not seen as expansionism. It's framed as the righteous act of reclaiming stolen ancestral territory and ensuring China can never be humiliated by a foreign naval power again. This narrative is so powerful, so deeply embedded in the CCP's identity, that to compromise on the 9-dash line would be to admit the party's foundational myth is a lie. It's a political and ideological non-starter. The line on the map has become a sacred scripture of national revenge. And there's a more pragmatic reason: treasure and power. The South China Sea is a global superhighway, An estimated $3.4 trillion in trade, more than 21% of the global total, passes through it every year. For China, it's an economic jugular vein. Over 80% of its imported energy flows through these waters. Control the sea and you secure your own lifeline while holding a knife to the throats of your rivals: Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and even the United States. Beneath the seabed lies another prize: an estimated 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. While most proven reserves are closer to the coastlines of other nations, Beijing's wildly optimistic internal estimates suggest the sea could hold riches rivaling the Persian Gulf. Whether true or not, this perception provides a powerful economic justification for its aggression. But the real prize isn't just drilling for oil. It's the power that comes from being the gatekeeper of one of the world's most vital waterways. Fortress islands and a forbidden zone at sea. While its gray zone pirates harass foreign ships, China has been executing the most audacious part of its strategy in plain sight. Since 2013, it has engaged in a staggering feat of engineering, dredging up sand and coral to build over 3,200 acres of brand new land on top of submerged reefs in the Spratly Islands. These are not tourist resorts, they are massive militarized fortresses. On its big three outposts, Fiery Cross Reef, Subi Reef, and Mischief Reef, China has built what can only be described as unsinkable aircraft carriers. Each base is built with massive 2-mile runways, strong enough for fighter jets and heavy bombers. They also have deep water ports for powerful warships and hardened hangars that can protect dozens of deadly aircraft. They are bristling with advanced radar arrays, sensor towers, and most ominously, missile systems. Hardened shelters house mobile launchers for the HQ-9 surface-to-air missile and anti-carrier, and the YJ-12B anti-ship cruise missile. This network of fortress islands is a concrete and steel middle finger to international law. It creates irreversible facts on the water, making diplomatic negotiations about sovereignty utterly meaningless. More critically, these bases form the backbone of a layered anti-access aerial denial system. In plain English, they create a no-go zone. This lethal bubble of radar and missiles designed to make it prohibitively dangerous for the U.S. Navy to operate anywhere in the region. It's a strategy designed to break America's alliances by making it too risky for Washington to come to the aid of its partners. It is a military machine built to win a war before the first shot is even fired, by deterring the U.S. from ever showing up to the fight. This brings us to the heart of the matter. The United States is being dared to flinch. The escalating violence at 2nd Thomas Shoal isn't just about terrorizing the Philippines. It's a direct challenge to Washington. The 1951 U.S.-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty is a firm commitment. Article 5 is painfully clear. An armed attack on Philippine armed forces, public vessels, or aircraft in the Pacific is considered an attack on the United States itself. For years, there was ambiguity about whether the Mutual Defense Treaty applied to the contested waters of the South China Sea. That ambiguity was resolved during the Biden administration. Between 2021 and 2025, former President Biden, along with his Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense, repeatedly and explicitly stated that an armed attack on Philippine vessels, including their Coast Guard, anywhere in the South China Sea would invoke the treaty. This has turned every Philippine resupply mission into a terrifying test of American resolve. China's strategy is a form of alliance breaking by 1,000 cuts. By using axes instead of guns, by maiming but not being deadly, yet, Beijing is meticulously probing the exact threshold of the treaty. It is asking the United States, in front of the entire world, are you really willing to risk a war with a nuclear-armed peer over a few Filipino sailors on a rusty ship? If the U.S. hesitates or fails to respond decisively, the treaty is exposed as a paper tiger. America's credibility would not just be damaged, it would be shattered, sending a devastating message to allies from Tokyo to Seoul to Warsaw. The U.S. has responded by stepping up its presence. It conducts regular freedom of navigation operations, sailing warships and flying bombers close to China's artificial islands to challenge their legitimacy. It has also expanded the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, giving U.S. forces rotational access to more strategic bases inside the Philippines. The annual Balikatan military exercises have become massive showcases of joint firepower. But from Beijing's perspective, this isn't deterrence, it's provocation. It feeds into their narrative of American encirclement, creating a classic security dilemma where each side's defensive moves are seen as offensive threats by the other, pushing both sides further down the path to conflict. The inevitable collision? The South China Sea is a ticking time bomb because it represents a collision of two irreconcilable, non-negotiable national imperatives. For the Chinese Communist Party, controlling the sea is an existential test of its legitimacy, and a crucial step in fulfilling its national destiny. It cannot and will not back down. For the United States, the credibility of its alliances is the bedrock of its global power. It cannot afford to be seen abandoning an ally under fire. Because these core interests are in direct opposition, the potential for a localized incident to spiral into a full-blown war is dangerously and unacceptably high. The most likely path runs straight through the BRP Sierra Madre. Imagine a future clash where a Chinese ramming maneuver is too aggressive, a water cannon blast too direct, and a Filipino service member is eliminated. The Philippine president, under immense domestic pressure, would have little choice but to formally invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty. The American president would then face a choice from hell: risk a catastrophic war with China or preside over the collapse of the American alliance system and the dawn of a Chinese-dominated Asia. In this powder keg environment, the future of global peace could be decided not in a summit, but in a chaotic, violent instant at sea. From a dotted line on an old map to a full-blown military standoff, the struggle for the South China Sea has become the world's most dangerous flashpoint. With China's wolf warrior tactics growing more violent and the U.S. treaty with the Philippines hanging in the balance, a single misstep could ignite a war between two nuclear-armed superpowers. Has China's aggression pushed the region to a point of no return? Or will America's show of resolve be enough to stare down the dragon? The clock is ticking. What happens next could change the world forever.